Alright, here's a mini mock-up of what there is in this food guide. This is meant for warriors mainly, but can be followed on any other class. There's not much to it, it's not rocket science, and you don't have to pop 10 elixirs coordinated with your party to get your food rotation going. No, this is much more simpler than that. And, just so you know, foods are an important, inexpensive, and indispensable part of BDO. There's a major difference between a player who has 1, 2, 3 food buffs going versus person who has 1, 2, 3, 4 food buffs going. So even if you have one less food buff than the other person, you're gonna be at a disadvantage, and that's no good. Alright, let's start with the basics here. First off, food buffs of the same stat cannot be stacked. For example, if you have a Kamasil meal popped, you cannot use a Magoria meal or a Calpheon meal to replace or overwrite the 150 HP buff with your 100 HP buff. If you pop either, you will only get stats for the buff that aren't running at the moment. Same example, if Kamasil meal is up and you pop a Magoria meal, you will get 2 crit, 2 move speed, 50 weight, but no 100 HP. The 150 HP will remain intact and untouched. However, food buffs with higher values will overwrite food buffs with lower values. With the same example at hand, you can pop a Kamasil meal over a Calpheon or Magoria meal, and you will get the 150 HP buff, overwriting the previous 100 HP buff. Longer duration buffs overwrite shorter duration buffs, but shorter duration buffs cannot overwrite longer duration buffs. An easy example is this. The red version of the Valencia special will overwrite the yellow version of the Valencia special, but you cannot overwrite the red version with the yellow version. If you use a food that has equal or less buff value and shorter duration, the food you use will just vanish into thin air and you will refresh and gain nothing. Lastly, cron meals cannot be overwritten by normal foods. This is self-explanatory and is written on the cron food itself, but you have to wait the entire cron meal duration if you popped it to pop normal foods. As for the 4 perfect foods to fit into your 4 food rotation, my recommendation is for you to use Knight's Combat Rations, Kama Sylvia Meal, King of Jungle Hamburg, and Valencia Special. The Knight's Combat Rations is basically the staple food for any person, really. It is a self-explanatory food. It's the standard PvP food for any class. 5 AP, 5 human damage, 5 damage reduction. What's not to like? As for the Kama Sylvia meal, it's the best thing to a warrior's food rotation because it gives you 150 HP, 200 stamina, and a juicy 5% back attack damage bonus. The HP will make you tankier, the stamina will let you do 1 more forward slash, and the damage is just more damage. For the third food, I highly recommend you use the King of Jungle Hamburg because it is a very good offensive option. While it only gives you 2 lines of stats, the key here is the 5% critical damage bonus. Since all the warrior's key damage abilities are 100% critical hit, popping a Hamburg will surely give you a spike in your DPS. For your fourth food, I really like Valencia meal as the defensive option because it offers stats that no other food can. It is there to counter any other user of Valencia meal, like how Protection Stone counters Destruction Stone. In that line of thought, it's how you cancel out the resistances with Ignore Resistance that makes this food invaluable in many situations. In that line of thought, it's also good because it's one of the few foods that have 120-minute duration timers, and you can rotate it perfectly in your 4 food rotation if you decide to use it. Now, personally, I'd use Dragon Meal because it boasts a 5% down attack damage bonus, but it's only in Korea at the moment, so no chance of seeing that anytime too soon in NA or EU or any other region. There are also many alternative foods. I wouldn't recommend you use any of them, but if you really want to use them, then be my guest. First off, we have the Serendia Special. The only reason you would use this is because of the 10 accuracy it boasts, but I'm not too sure if it works correctly in PvP or not. Next up, we have the Magoria Seafood Meal, which is a good alternative if your region doesn't have Kama Sylvia Meal. Kami meal basically replaces the Magoria meal, so with a limit of 90 minutes, you cannot fit this in a 4 food rotation properly, so it's not really that great. And you can get your 5 move speed elsewhere if you really need that. This is an unorthodox option, but you can use Calc's fermented wine. It boasts 2 more AP than Knight's rations, making it a stronger offensive choice. The 10 HP recovery is rather lacking, and you can't really compare it to 5 damage reduction. To make it worse, though, the red version only goes up to 90 minutes, so to fit this in a food rotation, it wouldn't exactly work well. For all you adventurous folks out there, there's an alternative 4th choice that gives you extra resistances. They both include prawn in them, so if you want to, you can use the hearty steamed prawn as a healthy alternative to getting 10% grapple resistance. The sweet and sour prawn will give you 10% into floating and knockback resistance. I'm not sure how these foods will ever save you in combat, but hey, maybe resistances will work properly with these new CC changes. Next, we have the supplementals to the food rotation. First off, there's the Spirit Essence of Water, which grants you 100 HP, and if you aren't using any meal that gives you HP, this is perfect to pop. However, I believe that you will be using Megoria meal or Kama meal in your food rotation, so there's no real reason to use this besides giving yourself the extra health XP that you get for using this item. Next up, we have the Spirit Essence of Earth, which grants you 5 damage reduction. This is supplemental damage reduction if you choose to skimp out on Knight's Combat rations in favor of something like Serendia Special or Calc's Fermented Wine. For PvE purposes, I really recommend the Simple Cron meal because it's rather self-explanatory, really. There's just too many benefits to grinding with this food up in PvE. Boasting 2% combat EXP bonus over milk tea, it also gives what no other food could ever give, skill EXP. With 2 move speed and 150 HP, it pads your stats and your survivability. The 13 monster AP is just a bonus really, use this food for PvE purposes. On the other hand, the PvP option with the Exquisite Cron meal is just flat out mediocre at best. A frequently asked question is, why not Exquisite Cron meal? Well, first off, because you're not an idiot. Second off, you give up far too many stats overall by just popping this. It's understandable to use this though if there's suddenly PvP and you need to go out to help your guild, but you're in your processing outfit chopping wood. If you can't make at least 2 food rotations before a node war starts, then it's advisable to pop this. Alternatively, if you're already running Simple Cron meal for grinding and suddenly need to PvP, you can pop this and be PvP ready. As for the comparisons as to why the Exquisite Cron meal just falls flat, here are some charts for you to look at. Here we have the 3 food rotation, and you can clearly see that the Exquisite Cron meal is severely lacking in these damage modifier bonuses that can only be obtained if you use the normal foods. If you happen to fit in a Valencia special into this rotation, then it just completely falls flat. The only reason you would use the Exquisite Cron meal is for the 15 all accuracy, which I don't know if it even works properly. That's about it for the PvP food section. Any other food that you see on the market isn't really all that great or viable for PvP at all. If you're lacking attack speed or casting speed, chances are your crystal setup is a bit off and requires a bit of tweaking in order to make sure you have the maximum of 5 at all times. You shouldn't ever require a food to hit 5 attack speed or 5 casting speed. As for movement speed, that one is a tricky one. You can pay to win an outfit and slot in a movement speed crystal along with swiftness crystals near boots, so you can easily achieve 5 move speed just like that. 4 move speed is also acceptable, but you don't necessarily have to eat any kind of food for it, or specifically choosing a single food just for the move speed part. Finally, for critical hit chance, I know some classes might require additional stats from foods. Given a baseline of 3 critical hit chance from Strong Shock Elixir, that means that you'd have to find 2 more critical hit chance elsewhere. You can easily find that extra critical hit chance in your weapon's crystal slot, but many opt for the Megoria meal to solve this problem. I simply don't recommend using the Megoria meal because of its limiting 90-minute duration, letting you only have 4 food buffs up for 90 minutes. but oftentimes that is enough for many. Warriors don't need to worry much about critical hit chance, so don't invest in any foods regarding critical hit chance, please. It's gonna be a waste of a food slot for warriors. Well, that about wraps it all up. I made this video to solve a frequently asked question on what foods a warrior should use, and hopefully it solved that specific question. For now, at least. Take care, safe buffing, and thanks for watching.